and everything that comes in to that. So I think what I'm going to do first is we'll do some introductions, and that'll give everyone a couple of minutes to join, and then Ben can kick off the recording after that. So my name is Kate. I've met a lot of you on classes already. I'm the president of Braintrust Consulting Group. I'm also a certified Scrum trainer and coach. So I've met a lot of you in class. Ben, you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. I am Ben Floyd. I'm up in just north of Salt Lake City. I have been a Scrum Master and a coach, and now I'm on my path to becoming Kate one day. That's what I want to be when I grow up.
Thank you, Ben. And we have three of our awesome Braintrust team on the phone with us today. So I'm going to ask them to do some introductions. Kristen, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm Kristen Barra. I'm one of the three Agile advisors with Braintrust, and I handle clients on the East Coast. And I see lots of familiar names and faces. So thank you guys so much for being here.
Scott, you want to go next?
I will go, yes.
Yeah.
I'm Scott Dunbar, and I actually primarily cover the Midwest, and I too see lots of familiar names and faces. Glad you could all join us here today, and I will kick it over to Allison.
Yeah, hi everybody. I work with our team, our clients on the West Coast, and I'm excited to be here to put some names to faces and learn some from Kate and Ben.
She hopes.
I will.
Okay. Well, I am going to bring up the slide deck. So I put in the chat window for those of you who like to have slides to take notes around. They're in the chat window. It's an 8 meg file, so it may be too large for you to download, but we will make sure there's a link to download after the presentation. So Ben, if you don't mind, click on the recording if you've not done so already. So welcome to our webinar today on how to build a culture of accountability. So several different things we wanted to talk about over the duration of today. And then there's an experiment I want to try with everyone as well. So I'm going to take the failure bow now in advance because it may not work, but we're going to give it a try because it's something I saw in a webinar yesterday to increase engagement and I really liked it. So we will give it a shot. So the first thing we want to talk about is accountability is not micromanagement. So if you're hoping for a 50-minute presentation on micromanagement, this is not going to be it. This is a session on accountability. So I wanted to clarify up front what the difference in these two is. And I've found various different sources, and I've quoted all of my sources here. So I am by far not an expert on accountability, but we cover it in the Certified Agile Leadership class. I'm passionate about learning about it. So I've pulled together a lot of my research, which is what I'm sharing with you today. So the first thing is accountability. The definition of accountability from the Webster Dictionary is an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or account for one's actions. So that is the definition of accountability versus micromanagement, which is to manage especially with excessive control or attention to details. So our goal is to build organizations with accountability that do not need micromanagement. Some of you noticed in the latest Scrum guide that was released last year, the roles of Scrum changed to the accountability of the Scrum Master, the accountability of the product owner, and the accountability of the development team. So accountability has become more and more into the forefront in our Agile and our work environment. So wanted to look through some of this today. So here's where the experiment comes in. We are going to have a look at measuring your workplace accountability. I don't know if any of you have done Mentimeter before or Menti, but I'm going to ask you to answer 3 questions. So Ben, can you copy and paste the link into the chat window? And I'm going to ask everyone to answer these 3 questions. It's a sliding scale, and I'll stop sharing my screen so you don't try and click on my screen. but I'm going to ask you whether you strongly agree or strongly disagree, and use the sliding scale to score where you feel you are. So the 3 questions: we hold ourselves and our team members accountable for results. I know how my work contributes to the goals of my company, and our leaders are held accountable for company performance. So I'm going to ask you to answer those 3 questions. Ben is going to put a link in the chat window, and that will take you to something called menti.com and will allow you to click and drag. So let me stop my share there. And let me head over to Menti and see how we're doing.
That link work for everyone? Great, thank you.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people in there at the moment. So, ooh, this is working better than I hoped it would. So far, she says. Let's just add so far to that.
Is that the accountability portion?
Yes, yes. And it's taking the failure bow and it being okay to try things and fail. That all comes into this. Okay, so we've had about 70 people fill it in so far. So our average score for holding ourselves and our team members accountable is 3.6. And this is the level that addresses the level at which employees perceive accountability across the entire organization. So this is how you as a group perceive accountability in your organizations. So we're saying 3.6 out of 5. For number 2, I know how my work contributes is it addresses the individual level of accountability. So that is the highest of the 3 of these. And this is what we would expect. And it's 3.9 out of 5. And then our leaders are held accountable for company performance. And that was higher than I expected, but it's 3.6 out of 5. So again, round about the middle, but the one I expect to be higher is the I know my own work contributes. So if I bring you back, if I stop sharing that and we come back to the slide deck. These are the 3 things we measured. So this is the level at which employees perceive accountability across the organization, the level that you as an individual perceive it, and then the level to which you perceive that your leaders use accountability. So I wanted to look at some facts about accountability in business. And this came from this report at the bottom. It's a 2017 report about accountability and teamwork, but it was really very relevant. So I put it in here. So the comment here is that although being accountable is vital to teamwork, and we need it for organizations to succeed, most organizations struggle with some level of accountability. And these were some interesting statistics for me along the lines of 93% of employees don't understand what their organization is trying to accomplish. So how can individuals align with the work of their organization if they don't understand what their organization is trying to accomplish? 85% of leaders aren't defining what the people should be working on. And it's the same number of employees craving clarity from those leaders on what they should be working on. And this is even more relevant in our more distributed culture that we're in nowadays. And then 84% of the workforce says we're trying but failing, or we're avoiding accountability, even when we know what we need to fix. So that's really quite a high and rather scary number. So let's do a deep dive into accountability and teamwork for a minute. So accountability, if we have teams that are not accountable, so, and especially those teams in a Scrum environment, you will be familiar with this. So if we have teams that are not holding themselves accountable, then we have, a lot of times we have resentment in the teams. we're irritated because somebody's not pulling their weight, or I'm irritated because I'm pulling too much of the weight and everyone else isn't pulling their weight. So in teams that are not accountable, we get resentment. We get mediocrity. Well, it's okay. We didn't finish the work we said we would. Well, that's okay. It doesn't matter. We'll get it finished next month. So they miss deadlines. There's no accountability for, well, I said it would be done and it's not done. And there's an inordinate amount of pressure in this environment for leaders to discipline. So it's not a very comfortable environment to be in. However, if we have accountable teams, there is pressure to improve, but the pressure is coming from everyone on the team. It's coming from everyone individually. They're identifying problems really quickly. Hopefully they're doing some form of retrospective where they respect each other, they try things, and they're continually inspecting and adapting and changing what they do. So they establish respect, they identify problems quickly, they continually improve. And in this type of environment, there isn't a need for excessive bureaucracy. The team's got it. The team is holding themselves accountable. And the best thing the leaders can do is get out of the way and let the teams get on with it. So that's around teams and accountability at the team level. So let's talk for a minute about the link between accountability and team engagement. So a couple of things to consider here. We create accountability by trusting the members on our team. In other words, if you don't trust them, then they shouldn't be in that position to begin with. So we create this accountability by trusting our team members, by communicating the goals and expectations, and then getting out of their way and letting them do it. The second link is, without accountability, engagement is going to suffer. You will not get accountability in an environment where your team is feeling micromanaged. So your goal with accountability is the engagement. If you hold the team accountable, they hold themselves accountable, then engagement is going to increase. And I like this summary. The bottom line is that accountability in the workplace directly ties into the engagement of the entire team. So accountability directly tying into the engagement of the entire team. So what does this look like in organizations as a whole? So we're looking at 3 different types of employees in any organization. And I've got 2 different reports I wanted to show you here. Ben, I think I've got a drawing on my screen somehow. Is that something on your end or my end? Let me just stop sharing and start sharing again because it's looking weird. It may have been a leftover from the Mentimeter. So let me try this and see. If not, we'll just ignore the squiggle on the screen. Okay, it's gone. So the 3 types of employees. So this is a Forbes article from 2017, and they said that there are 3 types of employees, 3 types of engagement. We either have employees who are really engaged, and they say 15% of the workforce is really engaged. And these are the ones who are loyal and 100% emotionally committed to the organization. The majority of organizations are not engaged, or the majority of employees, 67%. Now, this, I think I prefer the moderately engaged rather than not engaged, because otherwise that's a really scary number. And these employees, and I think this is where the margin of error can come in, because this is the group of employees that it's difficult to identify, because they're relatively happy, relatively satisfied in their role, but they maybe do the bare minimum and are not truly invested in the company's mission, vision, and values or goals. The scariest number here, to me, is the actively disengaged. 18% of employees are consistently negative. They create a toxic environment for everyone else. And these are the ones that dominate the leader's time. And they're usually vocal about their unhappiness. So this is the group that takes up more time and can bring the rest of the organization down. So the engaged is shown at 15% here and actively disengaged at 18%. And this is the Forbes article from 2017. The more commonly quoted article is the Gallup article. And this is actually from 2020. And Gallup defines employee engagement as the involvement and enthusiasm of employees in their work and workplace. And the numbers for the Gallup are that actively disengaged, they say about 14%. Forbes was saying about 18%. But the engagement level is higher for Gallup because they don't have the in-between. They reckon that 36% of employees are engaged. So two different reports, round about the same for the totally disengaged, and slightly differing for engaged and highly engaged. So the Gallup one tends to be the one that is quoted most. So we've seen that if you look at the last couple of years, we've seen that go up. So back in 2017, we were sitting at 33% engagement, and that has continued to rise, which is a really good sign, because at the same time, the actively disengaged has begun to come down, perhaps with a slight peak last year because of everything that was going on with the transition and COVID and so on. So employee engagement is an even stronger predictor of performance during tough times, such as economic recessions, such as we're in today. So there is a direct link between employee engagement and organizations that are doing well, particularly in economic recessions and times of crisis and things like that. So it's no longer something that's nice to be able to quote, just nice to be able to quote on your website or in your hiring process. It is something that is critical for the success of your organization. So I'm going to take a quick break there and see if anyone has any questions before we move into ways to increase employee engagement. So feel free to unmute and ask a question if you have a question, or feel free to put it in the chat window and Ben can moderate it for us.
Hi, this is Nisha here.
Hey, Nisha.
Is there a tool that we could use to actually get these metrics? Like, let's say in our company, if we want to see, oh, how many people are at, these different levels of engagement, is there a tool that we would be able to use?
Yeah, and Gallup, if you go to the Gallup link had the questions that you could ask and some of the tools that you could use. So from everything I've looked at, I will probably go there to start, because they pull in 12 key questions. I think they call it Q12 when they're asking those questions. Now, a lot of times they're wanting to work with you on it, but it would give you some idea of the types of questions, and then you could use something like SurveyMonkey to send it out. I know a lot of organizations, when we go in to help them with agility, whether they're doing Scrum or Kanban or any other type of Agile, they bring us in because the employee engagement score is low, and some of the different bits of being Agile as an organization, not necessarily doing Agile, but empowering the teams, encouraging the teams to make decisions, all increases employee engagement. So I'm aware there's a lot of that going on at the moment, but Nisha, yes, I think the Gallup website would be the best place to start. So the links are at the bottom of the slide, and I also have a useful link slide at the end with all the links in one place, so you'll get it from there.
Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions, Ben, before we move on?
There's one in the chat. Do you have any information on the potential impact of burnout on highly engaged staff during difficult times?
No, I haven't seen that. I think that the thing that I'm curious to see what 2021 will look like, whether the highly engaged number will come down. But I know that especially in teams where some of the team members are accountable and some of the team members are not accountable, we're beginning to see, I think, more friction in those environments, especially when a lot of our highly engaged people do have trouble perhaps disconnecting and things like that. And I know I would say that I would consider myself highly engaged, but I do consider that I have the, I don't know, the ability is probably the wrong word, but I do burn out, and I'm having to take a step back and see, what does that mean? How do we encourage ourselves and each other to take 10 minutes and have a clarity break, to go and sit out the back and read a book or something like that? So I think it's something that we will see more of, and I'm interested to see what happens to the burnout statistics. So great question, and I'll see if I can find a link to include with the follow-up email. So how can we help our employees become more engaged? And again, this is back to the Forbes article. So 5 different things I want to look at. So make sure everyone is in the right role. I know some of you have heard my bus analogy before. If you have a Scrum team or any team on the bus, you need to make sure everyone wants to be on the bus with you. Do they want to collaborate? Do they want to share? Are they wanting to hold themselves accountable and deliver whatever product or service they're working on? So if the answer is yes, then they should be on the bus with us. If they really don't care, then maybe they need to be on another bus if they're not bought into what we are trying to do as a team. And the everyone in the right role, I like to use the analogy of, is everyone in the right seat? So if we're on the bus and we're on a Scrum bus, our product owner is driving. So they better know what direction we're going, because we're all going with them. In a regular team, it's maybe your team lead, it's maybe your senior executive, it's whoever has the vision for where your bus or your organization is going. They're driving. And then we have maybe we have a team lead, or in our Scrum environment, we have a Scrum master. They're checking that everyone's okay. Does anyone have any roadblocks? Do you need help strapping in? You need something to drink? They're the ones to make sure everyone's in the right seat and support everyone as they do that. So that tends to be your Scrum master or maybe a team lead. And then our team members are all in different seats, and they can move seats if they want. If they're in a seat and they're not enjoying it, is there a seat they would rather do? Maybe they can move seats. And your job as leaders in an organization or leaders in a team is to make sure everyone is in the right role. So that's one of the key things. The second one is along the concept of give them training. So we can't hope to build a culture of trust and accountability, much less improvement, if we don't actually set the team up for success. So whatever your environment is, make sure your team has the training and the development they need, along with you removing the obstacles. One of my favorite Richard Branson quotes is, train people well enough so they can leave. However, treat them well enough so they don't want to. So I love that quote. Train people well enough so they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't want to. So the third thing about improving employee engagement is make sure it's meaningful work. So make sure the team members have a clear understanding of how their work is contributing to the company's mission. Is everyone aware of the mission and the purpose and the strategic objectives, especially for organizations where that may have changed considerably over the last 12 months? And again, when they have the right people in the right role, then a lot of times the meaningful work will flow into that. Number 4 is check in often. So the days of doing an annual appraisal or an annual review are long gone. So some teams will do retrospectives every month or at the end of every period of work. They will check in and see what's going well and what's not going so well. Any of you who have team members, check in with them every once a month. What's going well, what's not going so well. Those of you on a team that don't do retrospectives, start checking in with each other. What's going well, what's not going so well. So there's no point waiting 12 months to retrospect and then change it in 12 months. If we can inspect and adapt every 2 to 4 weeks and continue to increase the level of engagement. And the final one step to improve employee engagement is discuss this engagement and do state of engagement meetings. I know a lot of organizations do a state of the organization round table where everyone logs in. So the goal here is not so much, it is not so much a presentation. It is more of a discussion involving your entire team in the discussion and in the solutions, because the best people in your organization to come up with ideas to improve employee engagement are your team members themselves. So make sure that these 5 steps are in place and use these steps to increase employee engagement. So the next thing I want to do is I want to explore something called servant leadership. And I want to look at what does servant leadership have to do with engagement. So here's our definition of servant leadership. So it's a philosophy, try again, Kate. It's a philosophy and set of practices that enrich the lives of individuals. It builds better organizations and ultimately creates a more just and caring world. So this is the quote from Robert Greenleaf, who is the creator of this servant leadership concept. Again, a notable difference to the Scrum Guide. Prior to 2020, it used to say that the Scrum Master was a servant leader to the team, but it was changed last year to say the Scrum Master is a true leader to the team. So there was a lot of back and forth in the community around whether the concept of servant leadership was a good naming convention or not. But regardless of the naming convention, I think what it stands for is still really important. So I wanted to talk about the 7 different practices of a servant leader. The first of those is self-awareness. And that is all around the concept of, are you aware as a leader? Are you aware of what your strengths are? Are you aware of maybe what some of your weaknesses are? Are you playing to your team members' strengths? So it is being aware as a leader. It's also listening, and it's listening to hear what the team members are doing. And it's not just listening to conversations, it's conducting formal interviews. It's conducting informal interviews. We talked earlier on about maybe doing a survey to check employee engagement. So it's doing it with our team members, but it's doing it with our customers. What is it our customers are wanting? So what are they doing when we do servant leadership and we listen to our team members and we listen to our customers? Then we have an environment where we have happy customers, happy team members, and we have a more successful organization overall. The next one is the one we talk about in a lot of our classes, and that is changing the pyramid. If you think about a traditional organization chart, you think about the triangle. the bottom of the triangle, we have our teams. And then we have our managers, and then we have our executives and our senior leadership at the top of this. And if you think about it, where are our customers in that triangle? Anyone willing to put in the chat window, where are our customers in the traditional triangle? Anyone got an answer for us, Ben?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. The customers are down here. They're at the bottom of the triangle. We think the pyramid should change. Our customers are up here. Our customers are at the top of the triangle. The people closest to our customers who can help them most are our teams. So the teams are at the top of our organizational structure. Our managers are the servant leaders to our teams, who are the servant leaders to our customers. So in a servant leadership model, we are changing the hierarchical pyramid. So our customers and our teams are at the top. We're developing our colleagues. Remember back the example of increasing our engagement, making sure we train our employees. So our goal as leaders is to transition away from an environment where as leaders, we are chess masters, where we move people around a board and move them from team to team. Our role as leaders is now one of gardeners. We are here to grow our team members and help them be as effective and successful as they can. And we can't yell at them to grow. We've got to nurture them. We've got to support them, which brings us nicely into the next level, which is coaching. As leaders, we are now there to coach our team. We're there to grow the team, help them come up with some of the solutions themselves, not simply control them and tell them what to do. So leadership is very much a role of coach. We are there to grow our team members and to coach them. And by coaching them, you're going to unleash the energy and the intelligence that comes from your team. I don't know if any of you have ever watched David Marquet's video on Turn the Ship Around. He goes in to turn around a nuclear submarine. And on a traditional submarine, there is one captain telling everyone else what to do. In his submarine, I think there are 234 people making the decision of what to do, because he has unleashed the energy and the intelligence of others. And his comment is, how can one person making a decision be better than 234 people making the decision? So it's empowering the team and unleashing the energy and the intelligence of those you've hired to do the job. And the final one is having the foresight to plan ahead. You want to be a leader, so you are leading rather than simply reacting. And I'm not necessarily talking about someone who has a leadership title. You may be leading at a volunteer organization. You may be a leader at your church. You may be a leader at home. Everyone tends to lead in some environment. And having the foresight to plan ahead so that you are not simply always reacting. So there are lots of practices around what we would consider servant leadership. And to me, these I feel are the most important 7. So we've looked at the definition of a servant leader. We've looked at the practice of servant leadership. So the next question, and again, the link is here. Why does servant leadership lead to high employee engagement? And remember, we are linking employee engagement to teams holding themselves accountable and therefore more successful teams and organizations. So let's look at this. So why does servant leadership lead to high employee engagement? First of all, servant leaders choose to serve those that they lead. So they're basically asking the team members, how can I help you succeed? So they are there to serve first. They are there to serve the employees first. And then the difference there on employee engagement is really dramatic. when your leader makes it clear that they are there to serve you? How can they clear roadblocks? How can they help you achieve what it is you're trying to do? They make sure that the highest priority needs are being served. So employees, all of us like tactical things, but this is talking about the strategic things. This is making sure your team members and you yourself understand your connection to the larger purpose. It is making sure that there is a sense of belonging and continual personal growth for the leaders, but also the other members of the team. Servant leaders believe work is meaningful, and that is, there's dignity in all of the work. So we seek to match the worker to the work. So it's a story back to a company, and the name of it's completely escaped me at the moment, in Vegas, and they used to, when they flew people in to interview them, they always then, the driver picked them up from the airport in the shuttle bus, and they always asked the driver, what did they feel about that person? Because they were interested in how that person had treated the entire organization, not just the people that were interviewing them, but everyone. So it's where, around the concept of where employees or team members find meaning, they are engaged. So help your team members find the meaning in what they do, and they are engaged. The fourth one is developing others to be leaders. Coincidentally enough, when we're talking about increasing engagement and concepts of servant leadership, we were talking about coaching your team members to grow, and it is coaching your team members to be the leaders of the future. And then the final one is servant leaders inspire virtuous cycles of service. And this is around the concept, when leaders serve their team and the team benefit from that, then the team are the ones serving your customers. So you as a leader have direct impact on your customers by serving your team, who you're then serving the customers. So servant leadership is not going to be the magic answer. It's not going to automatically fast track higher employee engagement, but it is sometimes the fastest and most direct route to sustained results. So again, it's not going to fix anything, but it is a route that you can take that may be faster than some things to get results.
Kate, there's a couple questions.
Okie dokie.
Is there a risk that having an engagement conversation with a team could actually decrease engagement if people realize they're more engaged, probably working harder than the majority of their coworkers?
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that brings us back to having an accountability discussion with the entire team. And it's not a discussion that says, okay, well, half of you are engaged and half of you are not engaged. It may be a discussion such as, how can we better support each other? And what we're not saying is John and Sue and Suzanne are completely overworked. But what we're saying is, how can we as a team better support each other and get the work done? So yes, I absolutely feel that if you have a team where some are engaged and others are not engaged, that you will get resentment. And I think one of the easiest ways to try and resolve that is have the team doing some form of retrospective around how they can better support each other, and also how can they hold themselves accountable? Because we don't want the leadership to come in and say, okay, I'm going to hold you accountable. You want the team members themselves to come up with how they're going to hold each other accountable.
One more, servant leadership. How does this work when the leader requests the employee to define their responsibilities and their strategies?
So I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. Is it that the team members are deciding how the leader should lead? Can you clarify, Ben, clarify that question? Or maybe whoever asked it can come off mute and clarify it for me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So the question's around when you're the leader, they know they need a particular role. Like, for
Yeah.
example, if you have a bunch of PMs and they need some technical assistance. So they
Yeah.
hire somebody to do the technical assistance. They don't know anything about technical assistance. They don't know what they do, how they do it, but they know they need the role. So then they ask that technical person, can you define your responsibilities within our team and strategically how you're going to go about doing it?
Okay, thanks for clarifying, Ryan. So in that type of scenario, I would invite it to be a discussion with the team. So the team has needed those technical skills. What support do they need from that technical person? And maybe the PM is facilitating that discussion around how are we going to hold the entire team accountable for the technical excellence? How are we going to make sure that our quality is sustained? But it is a team discussion, because my fear is if you say to a technical lead, how are you going to drive value? How are you going to do it? We're looking for them to be more controlling than we are for them to be a servant leader. So hopefully we're coaching them so that their role is to serve the team. And how can they do that? So I think the easiest way to do that, Ryan, is probably have a team discussion on how we serve each other and how we can hold each other accountable. So I'm going to move on, Ben. Ryan, I hope that answers the question. I'm going to move on. There are a couple more things I want to cover, and then we'll come back and grab some more questions at the end. So the next thing we want to just step back for a minute is talk about empowerment and engagement, because they're not the same thing. So employee engagement, we've talked about this a couple of times already. This is the degree to which employees are motivated. It's when they're passionate about and invested in what they do. So that's about engagement. That's everything we've been talking about so far this morning, employee engagement. The other one I want to point out is employee empowerment. And this is the ability of an employee to be directly involved and have the influence over their work. So Ryan, if I can use your example, it is the team being empowered to interact with the technical person rather than the technical person telling them what to do. So it is empowering the team to be involved in the decisions that are made. So if we think about this, organizations that have the highest level of employee engagement are the very same organization where we have a high level of employee empowerment. So let's talk about ways that we can have empowered employees. And remember, our definition there is it's the ability of an employee to be directly involved and have influence over their work. So it's not just simply saying, okay, I empower you to make the decisions, because that's not empowering them, that's giving it lip service. But there are a couple of things we can do to empower employees. And it's not magic fairy dust. We can't just wave the wand and say, okay, I'm going to empower you. We've got to actually, it's not lip service, we've got to actually do some work here. And again, you'll notice that a lot of these tie back to ways we can increase engagement with our team and the way we can help our teams become more accountable. So the first one I want to talk about is give them a voice by soliciting feedback and acting on their feedback. Being aware that leaders are not the ones with all of the answers. It's asking the team, it's getting the feedback from the team, and it's acting on what they are saying. So we've got to empower employees to feel comfortable giving that information, giving that, being part of the discussions around what do we need to do differently? How do we need to move forward? Back to one that came up a couple of times already around training. This is giving the opportunities for employees to grow. We want to give them more autonomy. We want to give them additional responsibilities. All of this will help empower employees so they feel as though they can make a change in what they're doing. Provide them with frequent access to increase their engagement. Give them confidence in their own abilities. And then the final one is, again, back to our training and tools and giving them the authority they need to excel. So empowering your team is a lot harder than simply saying, well, my team are empowered to make the decisions. But you've got to make sure, are they really empowered, or do you want to just tell them they're empowered without actually giving them the power to make decisions and actually acting on their feedback? Are you giving them opportunities to grow? Are you recognizing them? Are you doing appreciation? Are you giving them the support and tools that they need to grow? So there's a great, it's a formula as such. It's not really a formula, but I like the way it all works together. So we'll go with formula. So if you have accountability in an organization, but you don't have empowerment, then you have a blame environment. If you have empowerment in your organization, but you don't have any accountability, then you have low performance. And in an environment where you have accountability and empowerment, that is the environment where you have high performance. So we've talked about how to increase empowerment. We talked about how to increase engagement. I want to talk for a minute before we take some final questions around how can we build more of a culture of accountability. So first thing, walk the talk. So the leader can, when a leader can stand in front of their team and say, I made a mistake, and this is what we're going to do to fix it. It's very much setting a positive example to the team. It's okay to try things and fail, because we will get some really good results when we're willing to try different things. So we want the team members not to be afraid to try things. We don't want that blame culture. We want to define the results and the expectations. We want to make sure everyone is on the same page. These are the expectations. These are the results we're looking for. So we're not waiting for something to go wrong before we say, well, actually, this is what we're looking for. So we're making sure that we're working with our teams or our colleagues to build this clarity around these are our results and these are our expectations. It's also about gaining commitment. It's asking, are you okay with this? Can you commit to these goals? So it's not imposing the goals and the expectations on the team members. It's defining them with the team members and saying, are you in agreement with these goals and the results and expectations? It's being open to feedback and problem solving. So this is around the concept of don't shoot the messenger. If somebody is coming to bring you bad news, then you need to be open to it and be able to admit mistakes and make sure people are empowered to bring problems. We don't want an environment where we hide problems. We're trying to be an agile organization. We want transparency. Therefore, any employee or team member should be empowered to bring any problem to anyone in the organization without fear of repercussion. The next one is employees. In your recruitment process, ask questions that you can see if team members are going to hold themselves accountable. If they're always blaming someone else, even at the interview stage, then that's not looking good for a happy future. So hire accountable employees. And again, back to our coaching. You see the common theme here. We're coaching our employees. We're coaching them on empowerment. We're coaching them on engagement. We're coaching them on accountability. Again, sitting down with them, defining results, gaining commitment, being open to feedback, coaching them. It's also consequences and reinforcement. And consequences, I'm not necessarily talking about always bad consequences, but there needs to be some consistency and some consequences for poor performance. We need to reinforce positive results and positive behaviors. And again, employees will understand from this what about accountability is all about, that accountability in the organization isn't just talk and no action. Because if we say we're accountable as an organization and there are no consequences when we don't hit our results or meet our defined expectations, we're not truly accountable as an organization. We're not walking the talk. And the final one, which to me is probably one of the most important ones to build a culture of accountability, is hold each other accountable. It's not just leaders holding the employees accountable, it's everyone holding everyone accountable. It's my team holding me accountable for my actions. So the key thing about building a culture of accountability is culture will change in a positive way when your leaders are consistently practicing these 8 different things. Remember, we're not going to be able to change culture. We can build or we can influence a culture of accountability with these 8 steps. And if your leaders won't or can't, we've talked about recruiting or hiring the right employees. Also, make sure you've got the right leaders in order to build a culture of accountability. So the final slide was around useful links, and I'll make sure that everyone has this. It's in the PowerPoint, the PDF that you were able to download from the chat window. It will also be in the follow-up. So Ben, I believe we have some questions that we did not answer as we went along.
What are examples of consequences?
And to me, it's a lot of times it's sitting down and having the discussion around, okay, well, we set this as a target. We didn't hit the target. So it may be a financial consequence. We're not getting our bonus because we didn't hit the target. Or it may be a discussion around, do we need to do something differently? And they don't always have to be punitive consequences. The consequence of not doing this, for example, we haven't held ourselves accountable, therefore we need to take a step back, and the consequence is we're going to have to spend more time coming up with our data and metrics so that we can hold ourselves accountable. So it's not just punitive, it's time, in some cases it's money, but it is how do we fix this going forward. I'm a great believer in we don't concentrate on what's gone wrong in the past. We come up with how are we going to make it better for the future. Something happened. I don't want to blame culture. It's not somebody's fault. It's what are we going to do differently going forward? Okay, Ben, what else?
There's a request if you could put the last slide up. Are you the links?
The links, yep. There's the links there. And again, I'll make sure everyone's got a copy of this as well.
There is 2 more questions. What is the way to work on providing accountability to leadership if they don't have an open environment to feedback?
That is going to be an uphill struggle. So one of the things that we talk about in one of our classes, in the leadership class, is how do you coach your leader? And the number one thing is I would tend to avoid the word coaching, but it's one of the ways that I like to use, and I think a lot of you, especially those of you in Braintrust, will understand where I use this, is impact feedback. So can I just check in with you, the result of you saying that, and I'm asking, not can I coach you, I'm saying, hey, can I have a discussion with you? Can you help me with something? I think I may be picking this up wrong, but the result of you sending that email was this on me. So the result of you being late to the meeting, I understand that you're very stressful, but it meant that I had to sit and wait and I had something else I needed to be doing, or it upset me when you used that tone in the email. So I'm saying this is the impact on me, and you're keeping it about you. You're not saying the team felt. You're owning it, and you are coaching up without actually using the words coaching. You're looking at the environment. Does it need to be a conversation that happens face to face? And I know that's difficult at the moment, but I've flown to various different cities in the world to have conversations with leaders when I felt the conversation had to happen face to face. In today's environment, when I have to have a difficult conversation, I'll sometimes take my phone outside and walk in my neighborhood. This is my neighborhood behind me. And I will encourage the person I'm talking to, can we get out of our offices? Can we get out of our houses and just go chat? I need help with something. So it's approaching it in a slightly different way. It's understanding what your leadership goals are so that you are aligning your goals with those of your leaders. So I hope that provides some rambling input there.
One more question. In the
Yeah.
absence of a formal employee engagement survey, what markers can you be looking for to identify that you're on the right track in terms of an accountable culture?
And one of the things that we talked about is a culture that is accountable is a successful culture. So is your organization successful? Is your team successful at what it is doing? And if the answer to that is yes, then I would suggest that you have engaged employees. If the answer to that is no, then I would suggest that perhaps there's a problem with engagement. I think Ryan asked earlier, Ryan or someone else asked about, what about your highly engaged team? Do you have an environment where you're highly engaged are burning out because there's less engagement across the rest of the organization? And if that is the case, how can we bring the teams together and say, how do we do a better job of empowering each other and carrying the load that we need for our organization? So it's bringing everyone together, and maybe it's doing a retrospective. So what do we feel we're doing well in the engagement? What do we feel that we're not doing well? What do we want to do differently to be more engaged as a team? So it's coming from the team. It's not coming from the leadership dictating what the team needs to do. It's the team coaching each other rather than the controlling of the leadership coming down. Okay, is that it for questions? Wow, 2 minutes to spare. So any closing questions? So feel free to take your phone off mute if you want to ask a question, or if you want to share something, feel free to do so as we close out this hour. We will follow up on Monday. You will get a copy of the PDF with all the links in it. You can also get it from the chat window because Ben put it in the chat window. So you'll get a link to the recording and the PDF. And thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Kate. It's great.